dire. I groaned in agony, on agony so that it burst the bonds of sleep, and I awoke from which was not at all a dream. It was an awful lesson, and that taught me how to become a wiser and better man. Still the phantorama glided upon the wall, revealing many a new mystery, and showing me that every human being is more or less responsible for the result of his personal influence exerted upon others. Much rare and valuable knowledge flowed in while I stood there, in the center of the magic sphere, gazing on the second vivarema, or living picture, delineating the result of my influence on others. Many and many a strange scene passed athwart the globe's interior, and I saw not only what the result of my influence had been, but also what would have resulted had my action in a given instance been different from what it really was. Thus I saw that had I crossed word and spoken to a child whom I endeavored to soothe by a kindness, that child would have been led to restrain himself, instead of, as happening, taking advantage and attributing my compliance to fear and something akin thereto. I saw on that mystic scroll the simulacra of every person I had ever known, and found that there, in the soul world, people and things passed at their true and by no means at fictitious value as men and money do on earth. All mankind are divisible into 7 great orders. To each of there are 3 suborders or classes. I shall speak of the orders, not of the classes. Many of those who, when living amongst them, I had ranked with the highest, I now found in this place where the secrets of all hearts and very deep laid open really belonged to far lower planes, and vice versa. For many a civilizee and aristocrat was now found to belong to the order of barbarians, whereas not a few of those usually considered low were seen in the better enfoldment in the thousands of the loftier pretensions. Will it be credited, I even found the purest virtue in one of the occupations was harlotry. Once upon a time, long before I passed through Death's cold river, I was walking through a beautiful grove, hard by my dwelling place in the house upon the hill. It was a gala day, and hundreds had gathered there to celebrate the noon of summer. Mirth, gaiety, sport ruled the hour, and my soul was very glad. Amongst the rest who had gathered there were several females, whose trade was sin, and who I suppose came there for horrid purpose. How mistaken was I! At the time it did not strike me that it belonged so cost could have a pure thought, or in any way be tempted to quit the hot pavements of the city to spend an hour in God's great temple, amidst its living columns, the stately forest trees, without mischief and wrongdoing in view. I looked upon them, especially her with the pale, thin lips and large, drooping eyelids, with utter loathing. And thus I passed them by. Years fled, never again did I think of them, much less the creatures would have aught of goodness in them, or feel the need of God's sunshine, or of a bath in its pure ocean of fresh air. In life they were forgotten, but now, as the mystic diorama moved forward, I saw that the very scene in the grove reproduced in every single minute detail. There sat the courtesans, there walked I past them, and as she of the large blue eye looked up towards me, with a mute demand for the sympathetic glance, one kind word, only one kind word, I turned heedlessly away, and in doing so, I now saw that the wrong thing had taken place. For I had spoken kindly, they might have been saved from ruin, so far as the world is concerned, utter and complete. Then, when it was, alas, too late, I saw how very easily I might have melted and won the heart of the woman with the thin, pale cheek, and she would have become the ministering spirit for good to many, and many a lost and degraded one. I now saw her antecedent, a young girl, a tender, loving daughter, fair, beautiful, and sensitive to the last degree. In her home misery reigned. No work for the father, no bread for her little sisters, a sick mother, and the storms of winter howling in the streets, and the cold wind, sleet-laden, searching for the nooks and crannies that it might freeze the little hands and make the pale lips blue. And then the father took to drinking, and the pampered servants of the rich lordlings of the great city drove her with large blue eye from their doors, and she was hungry, very hungry. And then the foul friend tempted her to accept a handful of silver from a male. For men never do such things, things so infernal, so hideous, so infallibly mean, in exchange for her body. And so she sold it again and again and again. Great God! She was obliged to sell it to starve in the midst of the granaries of plenty. Starve herself? Yes. But not only herself, that were easy, but the mother who had bore her in agony, the father whose reason had for a time deserted its throne, the little ones clustering about the scantily fire in the little tin stove. These, all these, must eat or die. The poorhouse, a poor refuge indeed, for although they may have been better off therein, would she? Doubtful, for well, never mind what. She sold herself for bread. Presently work came, but the stain was on her. She had run down and declivity so steep that she could never clamber up again, unless some friendly hand be stretched forth to help her. And such hands are very scarce. And now I saw what might have been done in the days gone by, had I only thought. The scene passed across the walls of my sphere, and then came after it a large blank space, and this taught me that they indicated in somewhere in my life there had been a corresponding omission. What can it have been? Scarce had this query been framed, and their appearance a picture, which need not be described, but the sum of those whose teaching may briefly be stated thus. I had never married, had never been hailed by the dearest titles wife and mother. I had therefore failed in one supreme womanly duty. Nor can any soul be fully filled with joy who neglects those great commands of God and nature.